What's the worst plot hole you've seen in a well-regarded movie? Every Christmas movie that centers around Santa being real and adults not believing in him. Who is actually leaving the presents? Because if it's the parents, then Santa isn't doing his job, but if it's Santa, where on earth do the parents think the presents are coming from? In Independence Day, when the Army is briefing the volunteers for the assault on the alien mothership, everyone looks at Randy Quaid like he's crazy for saying he was abducted by aliens as the world is currently being invaded by aliens. That always bothered me. They're all like, get a load of this guy, he believes in aliens, what a wacko. While they're all currently refugees of an alien invasion. NGL, I 100% believe this would actually happen in real life. Yeah, this is completely believable. No issues with this scene. In Back to the Future, Doc paints a line on the road so Marty will hit the wire and get the lightning bolt into the flux capacitor at exactly the right time. The movie even says Doc has adjusted for wind resistance etc., but when Marty goes to drive, the car won't start. The alarm clock goes off and he is still stalled. So technically Marty leaves late yet still hits the wire on time. So Doc's math was wrong and no one said a word. If the car had not stalled, Marty would have been too early, missed the lightning bolt, crashed into the movie theater and never got home. If Doc didn't piss all over his toilet seat, he would have never invented time travel. The real revelation right here. Cinderella, she is told by the fairy godmother that everything will turn back to what it originally was at midnight. Her dress, carriage, and horses do, so why don't her glass slippers? Fairy godmother planned this whole thing from the start. Why does Ross, the largest friend, not simply eat the other 5? The Little Mermaid. Girl, just write things down. I was about to say she wouldn't know how to write in English. But then I remembered the contract written in literal English that she literally signed in English and just. Look, Ariel isn't the brightest bulb in the underwater kingdom. She's a hoarder with daddy issues. She falls for the first stranger she sees, Eric, and decides to stalk him. At no point does it cross her mind to write shit down. And since Eric is royalty and knows that Ariel must be a peasant girl, she likely doesn't know how to read or write. So it doesn't cross his mind to have her write shit down. Edit, well, this comment blew up. Thanks for the reward. Ariel's father has a trident as a weapon. A fork kind of looks like a small trident. Ariel, is this a comb? Oh my god. Ariel is dumb. Saw. Why didn't he just use the saw to get the phone that was just barely out of reach instead of cutting off his duck and foot? 10 minutes into the movie in theaters, this big dude behind my friend and I shouted, "Hey, make a lasso with your closed dog." And it really ruined the rest of the movie. Now I just pretend this is what the Dread Pirate Roberts was doing while Buttercup was growing up. If this happened, Earl, I'm sure both participants would have been fully nude and they were just wearing clothes for the benefit of the audience. The movie series has nudity, just not when Teresa plot-related reason for it. The series has brief scenes of partial nudity, but Carrie Elwes hanging dong for 1.5 hours straight as the main set piece of the very first movie would have been a bit too much to ask. Maybe not the worst, but rats are not on the list of animals allowed at Hogwarts. To be fair, he was a human. Humans aren't on the list of pets either. My favorite part of this is so Fred and George never noticed on the Marauders map that their little brother spent every night sleeping with someone named Peter? Edit, someone named Peter who is also a famous martyr and murder victim, incidentally? Nah, they're just good brothers and weren't about to call him out on that. Weird that Ron never invites his bunk buddy Peter around for the holidays. Mom would be over the moon. He's also never invited him out to the Quidditch matches. Or even just to sit with him at meals. Hang on. Is there even a kid named Peter in his year? Weird. Anyways, wanna go make another batch of magical roofies to sell to the other students? Go on then. In the film Gravity, George Clooney is hanging onto a tether and insists Sandra Bullock cut him loose to save herself. This is complete nonsense as there is no physical force pulling him away. With the slight tug on the tether he would have floated over to her. It's a monumental plot hole. The director got an Oscar when he should have been imprisoned. Those are the choices, Oscar prison. The losers? Straight to jail. The winners? Surprisingly, jail. Why would Skynet send its more advanced Terminators to the points in time when Sarah and John knew they might come after them? Fred and George Weasley, and later Harry himself, having the Marauders map and not seeing the massive Peter Pettigrew on top of Ron's name for years. Edit, just realized this could have been written as not seeing Ron's massive PP, we'll get M next time. I love the McCoo, but one plot hole I've seen in the movies comes from Ant-Man. In the beginning of the movie, Hank Pym explains that when you use the Pym particles to shrink, you have the same mass. This way, when Scott shrinks to an inch tall and punches someone in the face, it's like being punched by a grown man, even though Hess very small. Anyway, fast forward and Teresa scene where Hank reveals that he has a tank on his keychain that he shrunk using the Pym particles. If this is the case, then how was Hank carrying the tank around if it still has its same mass? He shouldn't physically be able to carry it. Edit, wow, my first rip my inbox moment. Thanks everyone. I've really enjoyed reading all of your replies. In Cars during the one-on-one race between Lightning McQueen and Doc Hudson. The policeman reads out the rules and literally says no lollygaggin'. What does Doc do? He friggin' lollygags as Lightning speeds away. So even though Lightning falls into the cacti and has to be towed out, Doc should already have been disqualified from the race. Lightning wins, he gets to fill up with gas and leave Radiator Springs, leaving Doc to fix the road. I have a toddler and have seen Cars about 100 times now in this very scene, without exception. I point T out nearly every time we watch it that Doc definitely lollygagged a D should have been DQD. Just shows you that even in a world with talking cars, people in high places still lie and cheat to get what they want. Also, do they have sidewalks? Lara Croft, Tomb Raider. She's the only one who can find the pieces, and they can only be used once every 5,000 years. She doesn't want to use them, only to keep them away from the bad guys, so her best move is to do absolutely nothing. Disney's Hercules. Hades would have been able to check to see if Hercules actually died very easily. Heck, he was probably eagerly waiting to watch Herc's soul end up in the underworld. Pain and Panic could not have gotten away with that lie. Edit, while I'm at it, Hera and Zeus knew Hercules was alive, which means all the other gods should have known. It's sort of funny because this would totally happen in real mythology. Those books are filled to the brim with Bob tells God an easily disprovable lie. God finds out and is very cross with Bob. In Japanese mythology, Danzabaru is a trickster who ducks with the gods. He doesn't fuck with humans because they are too clever and the gods are easy targets. This actually makes sense. If you're incapable of death, injury, hunger, thirst, sleepiness, and all but the most minimum amount of physical discomfort, you really don't need to work very hard and can probably sleepwalk through life. This is actually a minor plot point and no less a treatise on Greek mythology than the Iliad itself. Aphrodite goes into full mama bear mode to protect her son, Aeneas, all the way until Diomedes puts a tiny paper cut on the back of her hand, at which point, she abandons her favorite son to die and ends up back on Olympus crying in her mother's lap. Meanwhile, Diomedes is later completely pierced with a spear, walks it off and is back on the front lines later that same day. Star Wars have plenty, but why didn't Obi-Wan remember R2-D2 and C-3PO is one of my favorite. What's worse than that is how R2-D2 and Sapo got to Tatooine in the first place. The Empire is looking for the Death Star plans on the blockade runner, but when said blockade runner jettisons an escape capsule, they conclude that they should ignore it because there's no life aboard. That might seem clever to Earth audiences today, but it shouldn't have even been a question to denizens of the Star Wars universe. In that reality, robots are shown to be just as capable as sentient life, and since the Clone Wars were only a few decades prior, that fact should still be fresh on the minds of military officers. Hell, forget the robot living creature part, they were looking for data. Data that isn't alive and doesn't even need to be part of a robot at all. That capsule could have been completely empty except for a hard drive or a napkin with the plans crudely scribbled on it. Many senior officers were junior officers in the Clone Wars, not to mention Vader. I agree, yet think they'd at least shoot it to make sure. Are we paying by the laser? There was a Lando Calrissian book in the 80s where he is blasting away on the Falcon and sees the energy expenditure and realizes it's going to cost him a fortune.